Welcome back to the Woven Well podcast. You know I love introducing you all to some of the great clients that I get to work with. I love these client stories because they give insight into real world stories. Real women, just like you and me, who decided to look into a natural approach to their fertility and how it changed things for them. So it's easy to feel like there's no way that there's someone else dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with. You just feel so unique and different. But we're not nearly as alone as we think. And that's so incredibly important to know. Community is important. You are not alone. So to continue with that trend, I've invited another client, Anna, to join the podcast today. Anna and I began working together back in 2022 when Anna wasn't sure Creighton or any natural system could actually work for her. So I'm excited for you to hear her story. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm glad to have you here. I want the listeners to get to know a little bit about yourself, so why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, well, I'm here in Denver, Colorado. I first connected with you by searching for a podcast, and I found yours. So that was a great connection. And yeah, I love being here in Denver. I was born and raised here in Colorado, so definitely enjoyed taking advantage of our awesome weather and walks outside, sourdough baking. Those are kind of my jam when I'm like, if I could pick what I could do on a Saturday, I'd probably bake a loaf of bread and take a walk with my husband someplace
Love it.
out in the foothills.
I love it. That sounds like a fantastic Saturday. So I'm right there with you. So let's start at the beginning. When we met, you were on birth control. Why were you put on birth control?
Yeah, it all starts back when I was in high school. I didn't get a period, and when I was, I think, a junior in high school, I think I was about 17 years old, our family physician was really concerned by that, and it kind of took me and my parents both by surprise. We didn't have a lot of conversations about it at the time, but through conversations later, I discovered that my mom was 15 when she got her first period, and it just wasn't concerning to her. And it was the last thing that I was worried about in high school. What I heard from peers was, it wasn't something that you really wanted to have was a period. So I wasn't worried about it. And that, the concern from our physician was well-founded, and we kind of explored what was behind that. And we discovered an endocrine condition that I needed some additional hormones for my health, specifically estrogen and progesterone. And I was just told at that time, the most convenient thing for you would be just take the birth control pill. It has both. And you don't have to worry about managing anything. It's really easy. Just take it and that'll be good for you. And I just accepted that, and it was many, many years. And, some of life's transitions that I took the birth control through, like going off to college and being a young single woman, taking the birth control pill, and it came with me into my marriage. And so, yeah, it was a big part of my life, kind of.
Yeah, and it's at that point, it's probably like, well, don't know about any other options. This is what they told me to do. So you were faithfully doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we often talk about the physical side effects of taking birth control. But you've also shared with me some of the mental and emotional impact of just being told that that's what you needed to do for the rest of your life. Would you mind sharing a little about that?
Yeah, I think for me, there was a lot of shame with it. That not that anybody shamed me at all, but just internally I felt shame because I thought, I associate this with sexually active people, and I'm this little 17-year-old. I wasn't, and I that was really important to me that part of my life would be reserved for marriage if God called me into that. And so there was a lot of shame that was a normal part of my life to be taking birth control pill. So I wouldn't share that with anybody even medical providers. I remember, filling out a new patient intake form, and it was like, I don't really want to put that down, and I don't think I did.
Wow.
My mom wasn't there. I don't know that I would put that down as a young single woman, just because I didn't want there to be assumptions around um, my private life. And I also, it really caused me to compartmentalize my life. And part of that, it's just hard to have conversations around things you don't understand or know. And so just my health was really segmented apart from the rest of how I wanted to live my life. And it just seemed like I need to take this for my health. And I really compartmentalized my health away from any other part of my life or my faith, or just because it was neater that way and it was more tidy that way, to just not question things, but to leave it kind of segmented off.
I so can imagine listeners resonating with that it's just easier, it's just tidier to do it this way. It's what you were told to do. And also, you didn't even know if there were other options. At some point, everything changed. So even though you didn't have any reason to think anything other than birth control was an option for you, you decided to do some research and ask some questions. So what led to that? Where did those questions come from and where did they take you?
Yeah, I mean, there were just a couple of times that I stopped the birth control pill just out of curiosity, like, do I really need this? Will I start having my period without it? Because I never had a period on my own, and I would have the withdrawal bleeds as long as I was taking the pill. So there was just one or two times that I was just curious and was like, what would happen? And nothing would happen. And what the turning point for me was 2020, and life was just crazy.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, I had a new job that went remote just a couple of weeks after I had started, and I just felt so much insecurity and anxiety through that whole 2020
Yeah.
nuts. And so I started seeing a counselor, and one of the, I mean, she just was wonderful to work with, but one thing that really came to the surface was conversations that my husband and I had had about adoption being part of our hopes for the future. And of course, we talked about like why adoption, and I had this deep-seated assumption that because of this condition that I have, that I would never be able to conceive and naturally bear a child. And she was like, that could be true, but you don't know that. And you don't want to make decisions, big life decisions, based off of assumptions.
Mm,
So she really encouraged me to pursue the truth and pursue understanding, and just like reaffirmed that adoption is good and that could be something that we're called into. But she was like, you don't want to make any decision based on an assumption. And so it really opened my eyes to realizing that I did have a lot of assumptions about what I was doing every day, taking that pill, and that had a baseline understanding of my condition, but that it had been, at this point, it had been maybe 12 years since I'd had that diagnosis. So I just thought, like, let's start at square one. And we got the diagnosis reconfirmed with a different endocrinologist. And we asked her, is this really the best thing? Because I had been learning about birth control and hearing about like all the just the adverse side effects, and kind of its history was alarming to me too, how it came to be trialed and used initially. So I was alarmed by that and thought, I don't like this. I don't want to take
yeah.
this. So I was asking, is this really the best thing for me? And that endocrinologist said, yes, this is the best thing for you. And we were like, we need to see what it would take to conceive a pregnancy. So we got referred to a reproductive endocrinologist and learned about the options with IVF. And as I was just I'd been so closed, like just emotionally, to the idea of pregnancy, ever since that diagnosis, that I had to really explore what it might mean. And so that's kind of where I came to really exploring, like, is it really IVF that's the best option? And is it really the birth control pill that's just my maintenance for my health? And that's where I was really at a crisis of faith almost, because it just seemed like this does not, I spoke with some really strong believers who had used IVF, and I know there's other Christians using the birth control pill, but at the same time, I just thought this doesn't seem to line up with biblical truth about my body, and just, I don't know that this really values human life and dignity, and yeah, and I just felt at a loss. So at that point, I was like window shopping for any books I could find. So I was searching through the library databases, like keywords, anything I could think of, like faith, menstrual health, Bible. And I found this book called The Brief Theology of Periods by Rachel Jones. And it just resonated with me. It just really it made me want every woman to have it and read it. And I thought that I am on the right track. After reading that book, I was like, I am not crazy to be thinking that God has purpose and intention for our bodies, and that He made me a woman and that that's beautiful, and that it's worthwhile to pursue health and really leaning into what does it mean to be a woman. So that was that was the summer of 2021. 2020, kind of end of the year, was when we were pursuing, like, we can't make assumptions, we have to pursue truth. And then 2021 was when I found Brief Theologies of Periods, and it was so good, but it was like kind of cerebral, I guess. Like, it was good head knowledge, and it really like struck my heart too. But I just was like, what do you do with this? Like, if you think about your head, heart, and hands, like, I don't know what to do with my hands now that I have this in my head and my heart. And so I need something practical to do. And so it didn't satisfy that. And that's how I had to keep looking. And I found your podcast, and it gave me something to do. At first, I was just, binge listening everything that had been recorded up to that point. I think it was kind of early fall 2021. And I loved it, but I was really sad because I was on the birth control pill still, and I thought, I'm on these synthetic hormones and I can't use this. Like, I really loved it and I wanted it for every woman in my life, but I was like, I won't be able to take advantage of this. And how cool is this? But I was in touch with you. I think we like corresponded, like passed some emails back and forth.
Yeah, you reached out to me, and I encouraged you to give Creighton a try. I really believed that there was more that it could provide for you, more information than you originally thought, or you were originally told. You were just basing it off of what you had been told in the past. So what was that learning process like? What did that change for you?
Well, I think you had connected me with the idea of looking for a NAPRO provider. And that's when I got off of the birth control pills, and that provider split my prescription so that I was taking estrogen followed by progesterone. So it was a new protocol, and I was just totally lost because my whole like cycling, quote unquote, because it's not really a cycle. It's, it doesn't really replicate a natural cycle to be on birth control, but my whole cycling life up to that point had been so predictable. And so I was just really at a loss at what I was experiencing.
Mm.
And so it was like, yeah, Caitlin, I think you're right. I think I could really benefit from this. So I think I tried like one cycle protocol without charting, and then I reached out, and the learning process was kind of raw at first because I had a lot of emotion about it. So I felt like a poser maybe in some ways. Like
Mm.
it's mimicking a natural cycle, but like I don't know that this is really going to be helpful because it still is, not the hormones that my ovaries are making. I need the help. I need the pharmaceutical help right now. So I think it was raw in some ways because it was like every day was like, well, will I see anything? Is there going to be, um, is this going to prove to be helpful? And so in the beginning, it was raw, but it was just also exciting because I just felt like I'm on the right track with this. I'm going in the right direction. And then it was exciting to have something to do, like to proactively
Yeah,
take part in my health.
absolutely. Because I remember when you started seeing changes on your chart related to the hormones and like seeing your chart begin to look like what other ladies' charts look like. And that whole process, I mean, you've mentioned how it did feel really raw. And I think you were right on the money with that. And I think about how many people feel that way. How many ladies get started and they just feel so exposed and vulnerable and they don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I felt like it was a beautiful thing that we could start seeing it, seeing your body doing it in real time. And I would
Yeah.
imagine that was also part of what changed things for you. Before you felt isolated and ashamed, and you talked
Mm-hmm.
about feeling compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what did it feel like in this new season, seeing things happening before your eyes and not being on birth control anymore?
Yeah. I mean, it was really encouraging. And I was like, even thinking, like, maybe this is going to just be the trick, like, not the trick, but like just having this new hormone protocol and having this way of seeing how it's working that I can like stick with it, that like maybe God will use this to heal my body, which will, so far it's like I think this condition and I are going to be wrapped up together for a little bit longer at least. But it's, yeah, it was really encouraging, and I think it gave me a lot more knowledge about what my body like should be doing, and also that it is doing a great job, like that it gave me a lot
Mm.
of appreciation for just all the things that work so well in my body, and also just like this is so cool that God made me this way. I think, yeah, it gave me a deeper appreciation of how like just like God's textbook design, but also that my body works really well, especially when I'm supporting it in the ways that it needs.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I think also it just gave my husband and I more ability to like, it gets used for family planning, but like we share like just this has helped us so much with having a common knowledge. Even though we haven't used it so much for family planning right now, it's like so helpful for under like having the same language and
Mm.
having an understanding of what's happening with me so that he can advocate with me at doctor's visits and have a good understanding of what's being asked of me when we
Mm.
go. Um, yeah, I'm sure like when we first got married, day one would be like, what does that mean to him? And now he's like, he could pull out my chart and tell you what's going on any given day.
I love that so much. Love it so much. So you went from this place of there's no way I could even participate in this. And if I did, it wouldn't make any sense. Nothing would happen, to a place of actively charting, being able to see changes on your chart related to your hormone therapy, like really being able to participate with it and even work together with your husband as it comes to using this together and advocating for your health. And that's just, it's such a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
What encouragement or advice would you give to other women out there?
Well, looking back on my story, like to me, what would have been really sad, and there's like some sad parts. Like when I look back on my story, there's parts that I was like really grieving at
Yeah.
different stages. But when I look back on it now, what I think would have been really sad, because God has used all of those, parts that I was grieving. But what would have been really sad is if I had disqualified myself and said that, that this wasn't worth pursuing. Specifically thinking about like that stage of discovering the Creighton method, but thinking that it wasn't for me, that I would be somehow outside the scope of it being useful. Just like, I'm just so relieved that I was able to connect with you when I was at that stage and that you were able to encourage me, because that would be my worst fear for other people, that they would disqualify themselves from this, because I truly believe it's just been such a helpful tool for me, and that it would be helpful for any woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Mm.
would be, I guess, my advice is don't disqualify yourself if you're in a unique situation or a challenging phase of life. Just there's not really a perfect time to start. Maybe the perfect time to start charting would be like right away after starting to have your periods. I don't know. That seems like maybe a lot for
Yeah,
a
maybe
young
so.
gal, but I'm like, I don't know. There's just not a perfect time to start. And we have so many negative influences in our life. I don't want someone to, be a negative voice in their own health. This is
Mm.
for, anyone, I think. Any woman wanting to have a deeper understanding of her body, this would be just so helpful.
Yeah. Anna, thank you so much for being on and being willing to share a piece of your story with those who are listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Listeners, I am so, so glad that you got to hear just a little bit of Anna's story. I think it is a beautiful example of how we can feel so isolated and stuck in what we think are our only options. But as Anna said, you are not disqualified. You deserve to work with educators and medical professionals who care deeply about you and want to honor, restore, and preserve your fertility. So if you'd like to learn more about any of that, how to learn, use the Creighton method like Anna, how to find this type of medical support, anything like that, reach out to us at the show. You can actually do that by sending us a text message. Check out the show notes for a link to do that. As always, thanks so much for listening as we continue to explore together what it means to be woven well.